Why was Top Gear during that era so successful?
I don't know. People do ask
The
me
chemistry
that a lot.
that presumably at the heart of it is...
There is a chemistry. I think one of the interesting things about Top Gear is that it's three presenters, and three is difficult socially. I mean, we know this from the old adage that two is company and three is crowd, and it is very, very true. And on TV, three people is a slightly awkward number, so there's a constant imbalance. We do annoy each other. We are. I always say that if we were all at school at the same time and at the same age, which we're not, but if we'd all been in the same year, we'd have been in very different gangs.
I've heard you say this, yeah.
We wouldn't be in the same gang. And that's what makes it work. It's not, I mean, I often exaggerate it and say we are creatively fueled by our mutual loathing. As, it's not quite that, but there's a certain, we needle each other, and it's almost a form of distrust of the others, or a slight fear that the other person might be doing better than you or being cleverer than you.
It needs a bit of tension, doesn't it?
Definitely. And I think when people have said to me, we want to do a show about, it'll be about something else like cooking or art or something, and we're thinking of having three presenters, and we want to sort of do it a bit like you did on Top Gear and the Grand Tour. What is the secret? And I always say to them, you've got to find three people who essentially don't really like each other, otherwise it won't work.
But there is something else, and I have often thought about this, and I think that you actually see it most clearly in the Top Gear that happened after the three of you left. I think the fact that you had differences and you weren't all just cardboard cutouts was great. But what did unite you all was you had authority. You knew what you were talking about. I think the reason that that Chris Harris was last man standing on the Top Gear that came after your departure is exactly that. He was actually the only person on there who really, really knew. I
agree with you 100% on that. And I think Chris Harris and you and various other people I could name that are greater authorities than me on cars. But the thing we used to do on Top Gear and now on the Grand Tour, even after it evolved to the point where it became a sort of cross between a pantomime and a circus and a sitcom, and all those other things, and was really car-themed rather than a car show, we would still occasionally allow or not be able to help ourselves showing that actually we did love the subject and we did know what we were talking about.
That's exactly it.
We suppressed it and we sort of brushed it aside and were a bit embarrassed about it even, but actually it was there. And
everybody knew it was there.
Yeah.
And that's what gave you the credibility. Do you buy into this idea that it wasn't a car show at all, it was a sitcom about three middle-aged men living together in a car-related context, and that's what was actually got people who were not interested in cars at all to watch it?
To some extent, but I don't think it's as simple as that. There are people in the world who think that we live in a big house together with some cars parked out the front and, the Stiggy's in a shed or whatever. But it's not. It's a bit more subtle than that. I mean, it is true that I think quite a few people watched us because they just either pitied us or found us amusing in some way or liked the daftness of the ideas. They were things that other people would like to be able to do if they had the time and the budget to do them. So we were doing it so you didn't have to, etc. But it's a more complicated and it's a very fragile thing. The sort of relationship that makes a program like Top Gear and the Grand Tour work, and it's I can't really articulate it, and I don't know if anybody can. Otherwise, you'd be able to reproduce it. It goes back to the idea of reducing things. This is what sort of marketing and analytical people do. Business analysts, I mean, is, they reduce successful enterprises or successful names into a series of bullet points, as if you could then use those and reverse engineer them to create.
It doesn't work like that.
BMW or Top Gear or Radio 3 or whatever. No, it doesn't work like that.
So there is a certain element of, what's the word? I mean, I suppose people do call it chemistry, don't they? But there is a certain stardust, if you like, which just happened to come together, which nobody could have manufactured, nobody could have predicted, and it just happened to work.
Yes, although I would say after the old Pebble Mill Top Gear, from which I was fired, fell apart, and Clarkson and Willman started working up the new idea for it, which did sort of incorporate a few things we'd done on Driven as well, because we were a little bit innovative with our 3-header tests and our test track and things. But when when they did that, and then they did the auditions, I think Clarkson, to his credit, knows or knew that it would need that special relationship between the three people.
Yeah.
And he was quite adamant about the sort of people he wanted to work with. And although I was rejected the first time round, I think secretly I don't think he's ever admitted this to me, but he really quite wanted me to be there because he could see that I was very different from him, whilst in some ways being very similar. And he got that. So when Jason decided he didn't want to carry on, he went back and he said, right, now we have to try James because I think that would work. And he was right. And me and Clarkson do wind each other up appallingly, but that's what you need for TV.
Yeah.
It can't be everybody meets up and has
mates.
a big man hug. Nobody wants to see that. It's appalling.
Well, there's a new idea for a TV show. Do you think the other sort of ingredient here, the other insight, is that, okay, not many people have a geeky interest in cars the way that we do, but because they are everywhere and most people drive and have to think about the cars that they buy, they are just about interesting enough to a general audience to underpin a sort of mainstream entertainment show.
Yes, there's a bit of all of that. I think cars are something upon which a great many people, probably the vast majority of people, even if they're not technically interested in cars, have a view of some sort because, they impinge on everybody's lives. Of course they do. If you did the same thing with, say, motorcycles or boats or light aircraft, people don't relate to them, but people relate to cars. The other thing is, I think enthusiasm is infectious and very watchable or listenable.
Sure.
And that's not just true of cars. I mean, I remember when I did the wine series with Oz Clarke, I didn't really know anything about wine. And I always used to refer to Oz as a wine ponce because he went on about it. But the thing is, he knows so much and is so excitable about it. Even about a bottle of bad wine, he's still excited because that's increasing his knowledge and his experience. You are bowled along by it because enthusiasts and experts are interesting. And sometimes, I listen to you two. Sometimes you can be, not wishing to be rude, but pretty fucking dull about some aspect of cars. But I'm riveted by it because it's a subject I like, and it sort of reawakens it in me. I think, oh yes, I am interested in this, and here's some people who have picked over a bit that I didn't know, and it's great. It's fantastic, and I think that people like to see that.